Welcome to another episode of Inside IALR. I'm Caleb. Thanks to Daniel for producing our show today. We're here with Dr. Scott Lowman, who is the Vice President of our Applied Research Division, and we'll get into what that means in a little bit. But first, Scott, if you could tell me just just a little bit about yourself and 3 interesting facts about yourself, and then just give sort of a short overview of your division and what you all do.
Okay, sure. Thanks so much for having me here today. One unique thing about me is that while my background in education is both in biology, and I earned my molecular biology degree from William & Mary, after that I spent about 10 years in industry. So I have a very much business background in pharmaceuticals and sales and marketing, and then also co-founding an urban farm in Virginia called Lynchburg Grows. It's one of the largest urban farms in America. That company, that business now is 23 years old. We feed about 200 families per week with the produce that we grow there. And we also purchase vegetables from farmers regionally. And it wasn't until I got involved with Lynchburg Grows that I became interested in agriculture. Before then, I was focused on human science, so think cancer and diseases. And then, of course, after Lynchburg Grows, I came down here to ILR to earn my PhD. Another interesting fact about me that makes me a little bit different is that I'm an elected official. I serve on town council in my hometown of Alta Vista, and I still live there today, where I grew up.
And how many years have you been at IALR?
I first came down to ILR in 2008 to a conference. It was called a Small Farm Family Conference. I came on behalf of Lynchburg Grows, and I saw the facility and realized that I could earn my PhD here and stay in the region, stay at home, and leverage my education in the past, sort of pick that back up, the molecular biochemistry side. And so from 2009 until 2014, I earned my PhD through Virginia Tech, studying plant microbe interactions at the molecular level. And then I've been an employee since.
I know the Applied Research Division has changed a lot over the years. We'll talk about it, some of that history in a little bit, but just for the general listener who might not know, in a minute or two, what does your division do here?
So basically, our labs are set up and our expertise revolves around biology and technology to improve agricultural production. We do more outside of that. So that's the research component. Our labs are set up for molecular biology, microbiology, plant tissue culture. On the technology side, we do robotics, computer vision. There's a component of that we've tied into controlled environment ag that I'd love to talk more about later. But in general, we also have testing services. So we have a wonderful analytical chemistry facility here on site. That's a full service, one-stop shop for analytical chemistry testing. And finally, we have a polymer lab where we give companies access to different equipment that they may not have in their facility, that can improve their production or improve their processes.
And you mentioned, controlled environment agriculture. We'll get more into that. I know sort of since our founding, which was, over 20 years ago at this point, agriculture research has sort of been, in some way or another, very central to what we do. So obviously, you said you got here in 2014, but talk to us a little bit about some of the history of the Applied Research Division, and even more so since you got here in 2014. What have been some of those other focus areas that we've been involved in?
Sure. So a lot of people don't realize, but when the Institute was first started, it was led by Virginia Tech. When they led the building of the design and the build of the building itself, and the executive director of the Institute was a Virginia Tech employee at first. So if you think about that along those lines, the first research that took place here was very much fundamental research. So looking at things that would be important to industry in 10 or 15 years, things that are incredibly important to society and creating wonderful scientific knowledge. But after a period of time, it became clear that wasn't really translating into economic transformation for the region, which is the reason that we're here. So we evolved from fundamental research to applied research, and that's the name of the division. What we mean by that is that, it's something that's important to industry, it's important to producers. We have wonderful partners that that we team up with. Since that time, we've even taken another turn and gone more translational research. So that's something that's almost immediately available for industry. So think about things that we can use tomorrow or that's important to industry today. And what drives our research now is not us sitting back thinking, what's important or what do we think as scientists that we should be doing for industry? That happens a lot of times in academia especially. What we do is listen to partners. So our research is driven by industry, by producers, by people coming to us with issues that they have. We also focus more on the manufacturing side. So biological manufacturing, growing plants indoors. So optimizing processes, improving production facilities, improving production techniques, and more.
That's a great way to break that down. And I never heard that term, fundamental research. I know, obviously, working here, I know about applied research, and that makes sense that it's something that can be applicable soon. And what you're saying, even sooner, is translational.
And I'll just add that as fundamental research, you have to get federal grants to get fundamental research dollars. And as the Institute, as a small independent subdivision of the Commonwealth, and not academia, not a Virginia Tech, not a UVA, it was really difficult for us to compete for those grants. Grants that, in general, only 5% of people are awarded those grants to begin with. So they're incredibly competitive, and all the grants that are turned in are good. So we really found out that since that time, and we've been more translational research and working with industry, that our new focus is now is teaming up with academia, teaming up with Virginia Tech, teaming up with UVA and others to submit grants. And that gives us a much better opportunity to get those grants. And that's really been playing out in the last couple of years, while at the same time we can focus on developing industry with ourselves.
That definitely makes sense. And hearing you talk about the what the Applied Research Division does is industry driven. I mean, I've talked with Todd Yates and Julie Brown, and both of them were saying that same thing for their division. That for advanced learning, they're not just sitting in a room deciding, oh, we should do this program. It's what are companies saying they need, and same for manufacturing. What is the industry saying, and that's where they're going. Cool to see that in all areas of the institute.
And one of our main focuses over the years has been agriculture. Why agriculture? A lot of people ask. Well, agriculture is Virginia's number one economic driver. It's number one. Forestry is number three. So between the two, it's over $1 billion per year that it contributes to Virginia's economy, and that's one reason that we focus on it. Our research program itself focuses on using biology and technology to improve agricultural production. On the biology side, we would develop biostimulants, biocontrols. Those are agents that are naturally occurring that can improve plant growth and health while protecting the environment. Consumer demand is changing a lot of the different ways we do things in this world. And on the agriculture side, consumers do not want pesticides on their food. They don't want streams being contaminated. All of this comes together to drive our research program. On the technology side, we use robotics and computer vision to look at plants, and when plants start to get sick, we can tell that very early and fix that before the plants are lost. So we improve yield that way. We also lower inputs behind that. And all those together, the biology, the technology, and I mentioned earlier the analytical chemistry, we combined all those together to team up with Virginia Tech to launch the Controlled Environment Ag Innovation Center. So that's more the technology side behind what we do. CEA is more technology driven.
Obviously, that is the main thing I wanted to talk to you about today is controlled environment agriculture. I know that's a booming industry, growing very fast. So tell us a little bit about what is controlled environment agriculture? How did we get involved in that, and why is that important? And tell us about, obviously, the innovation center we have here with Virginia Tech too.
So controlled environment agriculture is generally defined as indoor growing or growing in a greenhouse that's controlled, the temperature is controlled. So what you do is you try to eliminate environmental variables. And we do that. We also have hydroponics involved, so the nutrients are in the water itself. And the benefits of controlled environment agriculture is really what's driving the demand for it. So number one, a lot of these facilities are almost like a surgical room in a hospital. They don't have to spray pesticides because there are no pests there. Mm-hmm. So when you get the food from these facilities, it's 100% clean. It's never been washed, and you can eat it right out of the box. Part of what people don't realize is when you wash vegetables, that's part of what ruins their shelf life. So these vegetables and lettuces and such last longer. So you have less pesticide use, they last longer. In addition to that, they are incredibly efficient with water. So as you know, there are water shortages in California and New Mexico, where most of the lettuces in the United States are grown, for example. These facilities are able to recirculate 99% of that water. The only water that leaves the facility in a lot of cases on the indoor side is what's in the lettuce as it goes out in the box. Other than that, they capture and reuse that water that the plants use during the growing process. So again, that's low pesticides, water usage efficiency. And another important thing about it is that it's close to the source. So again, most of the food and lettuces that we get are from New Mexico, or California, and these can be placed near the centers where people are buying them across the U.S. So that makes it appealing on that side. So on the economic development side, it's also jobs. These are a lot of times factories. They grow stuff year-round. Traditional ag is seasonal. It's affected by the environment. Typically, most of what's grown in Virginia, for example, is corn, soybean, tobacco, and those bigger crops. Whereas controlled environment ag can focus on the crops that people want and enjoy, and it can be close to the source itself. So they're jobs. It's economic development. And I'd just like to add that what's made it possible, why didn't this happen 20 years ago? Well, 20 years ago, we didn't have LED lights. The efficiency of LED lights, the fact that they don't put off a lot of heat, has made this all available for the indoor component. So if you think about your AeroFarms and your Plenty, it's that technology behind the LED light development is what's made that possible. Before that, we had what's called high-pressure sodium lights, metal halide lights. Those things produce a lot of heat. Well, heat is wasted energy and also is something you have to deal with. That doesn't happen now. So it's the technology. It's put us where we are today, and then the automation and robotics is what has really made it the equation for economies cross that finish line.
And you mentioned you mentioned hydroponics. I know that's what we do in our facility. Mm-hmm. So you said that's with water. How does that process work? And then I know there's a different kind that's aeroponics. So tell us a little bit about the differences between those.
Yeah, there are a lot of differences, and we always have to keep in mind that practically every CEA facility has its own twist. Mm-hmm. The technology is not uniform. It's a lot of different things. So in our facility, we have what's called nutrient film technique channels, so the NFT. And what happens with that are the plants are grown in a little channel, and there's a small, thin layer of nutrients that flow down, and the roots sit in that nutrient layer.
It's with water.
It's water, yes. So water's flowing down, and the roots are just barely sitting in it. A lot of people don't realize, but plants' roots love oxygen. You think it's in the soil, so it's trying to get away from oxygen, but that's not the truth. Very few plants grow in water completely. So they like oxygen. The more oxygen you can give them, the better. So the nutrient film technique exposes the plant roots to lots of oxygen and makes the plant healthier. We also have deep water culture, which is a version of nutrient film technique, but it's where the roots are actually suspended in water. But the issue with that is you have to add a lot of oxygen to it. And those are the main two types that we're using here on campus.
And so at the CEA Innovation Center, as you said, that's a partnership with Virginia Tech. Tell us a little bit about how that got started, and sort of, what kind of work do you all do there?
Always here at the Institute, and especially since I've been involved in leadership in the last 5 or 6 years, we've been focused on external partners. So a great example of that is the CEA Center. We've had all these wonderful capabilities in biology, technology, and chemistry, but we didn't have a component for outdoors, for the controlled environment ag, for our greenhouses. And in meeting with faculty members from Virginia Tech and exploring options, I was able to meet with a director of the Plant and Environmental Sciences the College of Plant and Environmental Sciences at Virginia Tech, Dr. Michael Evans. He had just been hired at Virginia Tech when they combined horticulture, plant pathology, and crop and soil sciences into one big division. He has like 180 faculty members and 400 and some employees that report to him. And when he came to Virginia Tech, he came from Arkansas. And at Arkansas, he focused on controlled environment ag. So he's an expert in the United States in controlled environment ag. And so I teamed up with him. He had some startup funds. We went to the Tobacco Commission and matched those funds. And then we had some extra space here at the Institute in a greenhouse that wasn't being utilized to its fullest. And that's what we labeled as the Controlled Environment Ag Center. So it sort of all came together. And then, yes, we've got wonderful researchers and great skill sets at Virginia Tech with Controlled Environment Ag and Mike Evans and others. But at the Institute, we had all this facility based with expertise in biology and chemistry and technology. And putting all that together, we realized that, wow, if we do this, we can have one of the most advanced centers in the United States. And then you layer on top of that the fact that we have conference services here. So we can leverage their facilities and we could have conferences and such to bring in experts from the U.S. Also, we have a focus on economic development. I mean, everybody does in the state of Virginia that's funded by the state of Virginia should be thinking about economic development. But the reality is that's one of our main missions here at the Institute is economic development, economic transformation for a region. So in partnering with Virginia Tech, we leverage all that expertise and the resources they have and the pathways to grants. But with our capabilities here on site, our industry connections, most people don't realize how many people we work with because we have non-disclosure agreements with those companies. So we do testing for lots of different companies. In fact, at one point we had 50 NDAs signed with different companies over the years to do different work. The only companies I can really talk about what we're doing stuff with are the ones we've done press releases with. So I can keep it to that. But the neat thing about both the CEA Center and what we're doing on the research side is we're working with some of the largest companies in America and in the world in reality. And that validates what we're doing. That we are at the cutting edge of plant science in those areas of biology and technology. And it's something I'm very proud of and where we are today.
As you said, at the cutting edge, and that is also translating to economic impact, which again goes back to our mission. Tell us a little bit about some of the, I guess the growth of this industry, even in Virginia over the last couple of years and sort of what we've seen, and specifically the example of AeroFarms.
Yeah, so AeroFarms, they are a game changer, essentially a disruptor in the industry. They have been leaders all along. And as they were looking at the site here in Virginia, the leadership for AeroFarms toured our labs. I went to New Jersey with economic development and talked to them. And they cited IALR as one of the main reasons they located only 3 miles from our campus. And since that time, they've been terrific partners. So we've had specialized projects on them ranging from bioinformatics to analytical chemistry, to some training opportunities that we've had. Our goal is to support them any way possible. We made that clear from day one. Since that time, other companies have located to Virginia, including Plenty, who's building a $300 million agricultural CEA, basically campus outside of Richmond. We already had a head start, though. We had other companies here like Red Sun Farms in Pulaski that produces tomatoes. We've got producers in the Shenandoah Valley, App Harvest and others. And one thing that helps Virginia, of course, is we're located in the Mid-Atlantic. We have access to a lot of the population in the U.S. within a day's drive. So that makes a lot of sense. We have 4 even seasons here. The temperature is relatively mild. It's not too hot like in Florida. It's not too cold like in Connecticut. The temperatures of the facility are easier to moderate a lot of times. Even at the state level, from the governor's office down, they want to make Virginia not only the leader in the U.S., but even the leader in the world in controlled environment ag. Typically, controlled environment ag companies cluster. So there's a big cluster in Spain, there's a big cluster in Mexico, there's a big cluster in Canada. In the United States, they're sort of dispersed. With a coordinated effort, and a multi-pronged approach. The governor wants to make Virginia that new cluster of controlled environment ag companies.
No, I mean clearly, if you just listed like five or six companies already, so it seems like that's happening. To go back to the AeroFarms part of it, and you mentioned earlier that every company sort of has their own twist on it. For those who haven't been inside AeroFarms facility, which I would assume is most of our listeners, what is their operation like? Obviously, don't get too in the weeds there, but what is their operation like there?
It's incredible. If you could ever get a chance to tour, or if you can check out some of their videos online, it looks like something from the future. They grow on 14 different levels, so it's a 14-level facility, not 14 stories, but 14 levels. And basically, robots plant, grow, harvest, and start to package the lettuce. So a human being doesn't come near the food, and this is my understanding of all this. Of course, I'm summarizing, till it's packaged. So it's highly automated. And again, when you see a 100,000 square foot building, 14 levels tall, that's robots are moving around and pushing stuff through, it's pretty incredible to see. And at the end of the day, and the bottom line is when the packages come out, what comes out of those packages is delicious.
I have had AeroFarm stuff before, but I know that same thing applies here. I mean, with the lettuces and the greens that you guys are growing in the greenhouse, as you said, it's never washed. There's no pesticides or anything like that. It tastes. There's a whole different level to that taste than what you buy in the grocery store.
It's pretty incredible. And, I, of course, with Lynchburg Grows, with the urban farm, I grew stuff in greenhouses and in soil in greenhouses and raised beds. But, when we harvest our lettuce here, and it's something we haven't treated with, various scientific, during our studies, we treat things, and sometimes we do eat, sometimes we don't. But if we have controls, if we grow stuff for demonstration purposes, when we eat it, it's pretty amazing how a lot of times we grow head lettuces. So think of romaine and those type of lettuces. I've seen it personally in my refrigerator. After 3 weeks, it looks just like it was harvested. It's amazing, the shelf life and the amount of flavor that's in it. It's not, of course, beat up from being washed and shipped across the country. It really is a different level of enjoyment of food.
As you mentioned earlier, it's not just about the indoor agriculture. It's about how the chemistry, how the research into endophytes or biostimulants, how all of that factors together is really cool to see. And as you said, the applied research division is on the cutting edge of a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, Dr. May just published, or we as a group we published. Dr. May led the studies, but we just published a paper of using our biostimulants in controlled environment ag. So our biostimulants, when we test them in the lab, we see really great results, right? Almost unbelievable results. And then when we move them to the greenhouse and to the field, that's greatly diminished. Well, controlled environment ag is much more like the lab than it is the field, like field-grown crop. So we just published a paper where we increased lettuce yield by 40%. So imagine that. That's the bottom line. If a company can increase their profits by 40%, which it technically doesn't work that way, but it does increase their profits, and that's what we have in the back of our mind is to improve, of course, processes, but profitability and quality for companies.
For those who don't know, biostimulants basically. I mean, can you give like the 20-second definition of what that is?
Sure. Yeah. So we focus on microorganisms, bacteria specifically, that live inside of plants. And Mother Nature has chosen to put them inside of plants, and they do lots of amazing things for those plants. They can help them gather nutrients. They can lower stress levels. They can fight off diseases. They are a one-stop shop for different tools to improve agricultural production. The interesting thing about biostimulants in general is that they were overlooked. Number one, they're difficult to patent, so large companies did not really promote them early on. They stuck to chemicals, which you could patent. But there has been a sea change in interest in biostimulants in the last few years. Again, back up to the big picture. We have to increase agricultural production by 50% to feed the population in 2050 worldwide. But we have to do it while also not using less pesticides, using less fertilizer. So we have a big challenge, and biology and biostimulants really plays into that and is a key to it. And now we're working with some of the biggest names in ag to develop better biostimulants for tomorrow.
So, we've talked about the economic impact of CEA. We've talked about, some of the science behind it. Let's talk about the CEA Summit East. I know that was, basically a big conference that we hosted last year to talk about or to bring the industry together. So, and again, we're hosting this year. So tell us a little bit more about that conference, how we ended up hosting that, what the impact of that is.
So again, it's about partnerships. We're scientists here at the Institute. We're focused on economic transformation, but at the end of the day, we're scientists. And we knew we had the facilities here. We had a great story to tell, but how to tell that story and to get people here, we knew we needed to have a conference. So we started to develop it. It was kind of going slow. In the back of my mind, I knew, scientists aren't the best people to put conferences on, right? If you really want them interested in getting people in and organizing things from the food to the displays to the sponsorships and all, we're not the best for that. And I met a gentleman that is a partner with Indoor AgCon. And once he was able to tour a facility, he wanted to see the CEA Center. And once he saw what we had, he's like, listen, I want to put you in touch with Indoor AgCon if you're interested in a conference, because they're interested in being on the East Coast. Their conference is typically in Las Vegas. And so he did. And what we ended up with was a connection with Indoor AgCon. We talked to them once or twice, and they were like, wow, this is exactly what we want. You guys have this facility. They came down and visited, was blown away. They talked to our conference services team, who blows everyone away. So it's really fun to have not only our facilities, but the people running that facility that everyone compliments on. And sure enough, within about a month, we had decided, okay, let's do this. And we decided, let's do this in 3 months. So putting together a big conference in just a handful of months is a challenge. So we met weekly. We developed a speaker list. We got everything together. And basically, we met all of our goals with that conference. We had over 200 people attend, 28 different states, including Puerto Rico and Canada. We had engineers. We had educators. We had even localities. We had economic development folks here. It was such a wonderful array of people coming together. And as Mike Evans at Virginia Tech always says, when you get a lot of people together, you have creative collisions and things happen. And we had Era Farms was the keynote speaker, and the Secretary of Ag, Matthew Lohr, came down and led the conference off. So not only was it a way to promote and share what we did or do, but it's also a way to move the whole industry forward and put a spotlight on Virginia. After that conference, I attended the Indoor Ag Conference in Las Vegas, and there's lots of buzz about the Virginia conference, and a lot of buzz about Virginia and what they're doing to get all these controlled environment ag companies, which is great to see.
It's cool to see the impact that conference made last year, and I'm excited to see. I wasn't here for that last year. I'm excited to see where it goes this year, and it's cool what you're talking about with the industry, like all the different types of people that are involved in that industry. It's agriculture, it's technology, it's education. I know you all are working on workforce development specifically for that industry. There's so many other sectors that sort of, it seems like, collide with CEA.
That's right. And in fact, at Indoor AgCon Las Vegas, VEDP, Virginia Economic Development Partnership, joined me at the booth. And he was meeting companies, talking about Virginia. And as soon as he finished talking about Virginia and all the great things Virginia could do, he handed them off to me. And I talked about all the good things we could do for them. From, a lot of times in the CEA facilities, they have pathogens coming in on their seeds. So we can monitor seeds, right? That's just an example. We can look at water quality. We can look at next generation type stuff and robotics and computer vision. So partnering with that economic development is a big thing. Another component is partnering with the Secretary of Ag and the Governor's Office to promote controlled environment ag. When they run across someone, they send them to us to see how we can help out. And that's why we're here. I think that is fulfilling our mission to the T as to why we're here. We're supporting companies, growth, economic development, and a component of that you mentioned is workforce development. So we're looking at different ways. We've always had an internship program that's terrific. So we have about 6 to 8 interns per year. But we're looking at ways to grow beyond that. And at the workforce level, we're working with Go Virginia. So Go Virginia's teamed up with us and Virginia Tech, and we're putting together a study of how the Institute and Virginia Tech can be leveraged to both increase the number of controlled environment ag companies in Virginia, but also how to support those. And workforce keeps coming up over and over again. So we're talking with community colleges. There's a cool component with Go Tech, or Great Opportunities in Engineering and Technology program that Dr. Brown leads. We learned there were some school systems that want to introduce ag into that Go Tech program. Well, they teamed up with Virginia Tech, with Dr. Kaylee South, who is here on our campus now. And I should step back and say, Dr. South is terrific, and it really demonstrates Virginia Tech's commitment to this Controlled Environment Ag Center. And she worked with the Go Tech folks to create a lesson around a 3-tiered indoor grow system. They were able to implement that in about 6 months. So a new industry comes to Virginia, the governor and the governor's office and economic development of the state decides that industry is important. Within 6 months, we have a program where we're introducing that to middle schoolers across the state of Virginia. And when we tell people that story, they're blown away. That's something that highlights her program and the different things it can do, but it also demonstrates another way that we're promoting controlled environment ag in Virginia, even in middle schools across the state.
Really cool, as you said, the work that you all do, it exemplifies our mission of economic transformation, and it ties into conferencing, as you said. It ties into manufacturing. It ties into workforce development and learning. It ties in to economic development, and obviously it ties into research. So, I mean, it's just cool to see all those different things intersect. But I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk today. I mean, is there anything else you would want to add, or any other things you think it's important that people know?
Always, as a researcher, as a scientist, I'm always thinking about the future. Where are things going? There's a lot of opportunities in the future for controlled environment ag. Think today with lettuces and such, but there's a push now for aquaponics, where we grow fish and plants together. There's a company that we work with that's doing a terrific job at that. But think tomorrow, maybe these plants can be producing pharmaceuticals, high-value products. We have the tools here already to help that out. Another area that we're really interested in and is growing quickly in the state of Virginia, the governor just incentivized 2 different projects to the tune of $66 million, one at UVA and one in Roanoke, for biotech and biomanufacturing. Well, all of this fits under controlled environment ag. So think about the ability to have microorganisms convert food waste into chemicals, or take sugars that or maybe not used for something and make them something else. So through the use of biology, there's incredible potential for making different products, everything from glues to plastics to fabrics. All this can be made through biology, and that seems to be the way things are going in the future because it's so sustainable. Practically everything you put into it and everything that comes out of it can be reused. So we're super excited not only where we are today with the Controlled Environment Ag Center, but where controlled environment ag is going tomorrow.
I'm always fascinated by the work that you guys do, and it's cool to see that it's not just interesting, but it's having an impact. So thanks for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Megabytes IALR's on-site cafe features everyday favorites, convenient ordering options, and an eager staff ready to welcome and serve you. Our enticing menus offer something for everyone, from a fresh, well-stocked salad bar, wraps, sandwiches, and our rotating hot buffet offered on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Megabytes is open Monday through Friday from 9:15 a.m. until 1:30 p.m. To view menus and for more information, visit IALR.org/megabytes.